The first thing I noticed was the way my wife smiled at him. Not at me. At him. It happened in the middle of the restaurant while 70 people applauded for her birthday speech. Crystal glasses clinked together, and soft jazz floated through the rooftop lounge overlooking downtown Chicago. Everyone around the table was laughing, drinking, celebrating Amelia's 34th birthday like it was some glamorous magazine spread. But all I could see was the look on her face when she turned toward Daniel Mercer. It was warm, tender, almost intimate. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. I sat at the end of the long private table with my fingers wrapped around a whiskey glass I hadn't touched in 20 minutes. The candlelight reflected off polished silverware and expensive wine bottles. The skyline glittered behind Amelia through the massive glass windows, turning her into a silhouette framed by city lights. She looked beautiful. Painfully beautiful. Black satin dress. Loose brunette curls. Diamond earrings I bought her last Christmas. And she was looking at another man like he hung the moon. "Before we cut the cake," Amelia said into the microphone, laughing softly as her friends cheered, "I just want to thank the people who made this year survivable." Everyone clapped again. I forced a smile. Her eyes scanned the room. Our friends. Her coworkers. My brother. My parents. Then Daniel. Always Daniel. "And honestly," she continued, voice softer now, "there's one person here who was there for me during my hardest days this year." The room quieted. Something cold moved through my chest. Daniel looked down modestly, already smiling like he knew what was coming. Amelia laughed nervously. "You know who you are." Several guests turned toward him automatically. My stomach tightened. She stepped away from the table and walked directly toward Daniel while everyone watched. Then she placed her hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered into the microphone. The room exploded into applause. My ears rang. I sat frozen. Because my wife had never once publicly thanked me for surviving the worst year of our marriage. Not once. But there she was, standing beside another man while people around us exchanged knowing looks. Daniel stood and hugged her. Not a quick, polite hug. A slow one. Careful. Familiar. His hand slid across the middle of her back, while she closed her eyes for one extra second too long. Something inside me cracked. Maybe nobody else noticed. Maybe everyone did. But I noticed. I noticed every damn thing. I noticed my friend Marcus glance at me awkwardly before immediately looking away. I noticed Amelia's cousin trying not to smirk. I noticed how Daniel whispered something into Amelia's ear that made her blush. Blush. My wife blushed for another man in front of me. And suddenly, all the sleepless nights over the past 8 months came rushing back. Every unanswered text. Every late meeting. Every emotional distance. Every moment she turned away in bed, pretending she was exhausted. Every conversation that somehow became my fault. The arguments. The cold silences. The loneliness. I remembered standing alone in our kitchen 3 months earlier, while Amelia sat on the patio, texting someone for nearly an hour with a smile she never gave me anymore. When I asked who it was, she said, "Work stuff." When I asked why she suddenly guarded her phone, she accused me of being paranoid. When I asked if we were okay, she cried and told me I was emotionally suffocating her. So I backed off. I gave her space. I tried harder. God, I tried harder. Therapy suggestions. Weekend trips. Flowers. Date nights. I even took less overtime at the architecture firm because she claimed I wasn't emotionally available enough. Meanwhile, she was giving pieces of herself to someone else. Publicly. Right in front of me. The applause slowly died down. Amelia wiped beneath her eyes dramatically. "Oh my God," she laughed, "now I'm emotional." Daniel squeezed her hand before sitting back down. Squeezed her hand. And that was the exact moment I stopped fighting for our marriage. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. like a light finally burning out after flickering too long. Amelia returned to her seat across from me. For half a second, our eyes met. She must have seen something different in my face, because her smile faded slightly. "You okay?" she mouthed. I nodded once. Then I picked up my whiskey and finally took a sip. It burned all the way down. The rest of the dinner blurred together after that. People laughed. Servers brought out lobster tails and filet mignon. Someone started a story about Vegas. Amelia kept touching Daniel casually whenever she laughed. A hand on his arm. A lean toward his shoulder. Little moments. Tiny betrayals stacked together until they became impossible to ignore. And the worst part, nobody acted surprised. That's what destroyed me. Not the flirting. Not the speech. Not even the hug. It was the fact everyone looked comfortable with it. Like this dynamic had existed for a while. Like I was the only idiot still catching up. At one point, Marcus leaned toward me quietly. "You good?" I stared at him for a second too long. "You knew." His face changed instantly. That hesitation told me everything. Marcus exhaled carefully. "Ethan." I laughed once under my breath. "You knew." It's not what you think. That line should honestly be retired forever. He rubbed his forehead. Nothing happened. Then why does everybody look nervous except them? Marcus didn't answer. Because there wasn't one. Across the table, Amelia was laughing again, while Daniel showed her something on his phone. Her body angled toward him naturally. Comfortably. Like a couple. I suddenly realized I couldn't remember the last time she looked at me like that. Maybe 6 months. Maybe longer. The cake arrived 20 minutes later. 3 tiers. Gold candles. Ridiculously expensive. Everyone sang happy birthday, while Amelia smiled brightly for photos. Daniel stood beside her during every picture. Not me. Nobody even corrected it. Her best friend Vanessa took photos while saying, "Okay, now one with Daniel too." And Amelia immediately wrapped her arm around him. I felt invisible. No. Not invisible. Replaced. That was the word. Like I'd slowly been phased out of my own marriage, while everyone politely pretended not to notice. Halfway through dessert, Amelia stood to greet more guests arriving from the downstairs lounge. Daniel followed her. I watched them disappear together toward the balcony corridor. Something inside me told me to stay seated. To ignore it. To avoid humiliating myself. But another part, the exhausted, wounded part, needed the truth. So I stood. Nobody stopped me. I walked through the restaurant slowly, past conversations and candlelit tables, until I reached the hallway leading toward the private balcony. And there they were. Standing close together, beneath hanging lights overlooking the city. Too close. Amelia's back faced me. Daniel leaned down toward her. She touched his chest lightly while speaking. Then he brushed hair behind her ear. My chest hollowed out instantly. That tiny gesture hurt more than if I'd caught them kissing. Because it was intimate. Natural. Practiced. Amelia looked up at him with soft eyes. She whispered. Daniel smiled sadly. "You don't have to explain. You make me feel understood." My heartbeat stopped. Daniel touched her face gently. "You deserve to be happy." That sentence shattered something permanent inside me. Because I used to say things like that to her. Back before she stopped hearing me. I stepped backward before they noticed me. My legs felt numb. I returned to the dining room, somehow breathing normally, while the world tilted sideways around me. Nobody looked up when I sat down again. The cake candles flickered. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed loudly nearby. And I realized something terrifying. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just tired. Deeply tired. Like I'd been carrying our marriage alone for months without admitting it. I looked toward the velvet gift table near the entrance. That's where I'd placed her birthday present earlier. A small black box wrapped with silver ribbon. Inside was the key to the lake house. Not rented. But I'd spent 7 months secretly renovating a property in northern Wisconsin because Amelia once said she dreamed about escaping city life someday. I rebuilt the dock myself, installed the kitchen she wanted, even hung porch lights exactly like the ones from a Pinterest board she showed me 2 years ago. Tonight, I planned to surprise her. I was going to hand her the key after dinner. Tell her we could start over there. Fresh air. Fresh beginning. No distractions. No stress. No city pressure. I'd spent nearly every extra dollar making it happen. Because I still believed in us. God, what an idiot. I stared at the gift table for a long moment. Then slowly stood. Nobody noticed me walk over. I picked up the black gift box calmly. Vanessa looked confused. Wait, aren't you doing presents later? I smiled politely. Change of plans. Before she could respond, I put on my coat. Marcus stood abruptly from the table. Ethan. It's okay, I interrupted gently. And strangely enough, it was. Not okay in the sense that it didn't hurt. It hurt so badly, I thought my ribs might crack open. But okay in the sense that clarity finally arrived. The confusion was gone. The begging was gone. The constant self-doubt was gone. For months, I kept wondering why I wasn't enough. Now I understood. Because Amelia had already emotionally left the marriage, while I was still fighting to save it. I headed toward the exit. Just before I reached the doors, Amelia re-entered the dining room, laughing softly with Daniel beside her. Then she saw me holding the gift box. Her smile vanished instantly. Ethan. The room quieted subtly. I kept walking. She hurried toward me. Wait, where are you going? Home. What about the parties? I glanced briefly toward Daniel, standing several feet behind her. Then back at my wife. You should stay, I said calmly. You seem happy. Confusion flickered across her face. Why are you holding my gift? I almost laughed at the wording. My gift. Like she still had ownership over something built with love she stopped valuing months ago. I looked at the box. Then at her. I don't think it belongs to you anymore. Silence. Real silence this time. The entire nearby section of guests stopped pretending not to listen. Amelia stared at me like she couldn't process what she'd heard. Ethan, what the hell does that mean? I studied her face carefully. The woman I married. The woman I spent 11 years loving. The woman who once cried in my arms because she said nobody had ever made her feel safe before. And suddenly, I realized something heartbreaking. She genuinely thought I would never leave. No matter how lonely she made me. No matter how far she drifted. No matter how publicly she humiliated me. She thought I'd keep absorbing it forever. Because I always had. Until tonight. You thanked another man for being there for you, I said quietly. At your birthday party, in front of your husband. Her eyes widened slightly. That's not fair. I watched him touch your face. Color drained from her cheeks. Behind her, Daniel straightened. It's not what. I held up my hand. No, I said softly, I'm done hearing that sentence. Amelia looked panicked now. Actually panicked. Like reality, finally, slapped her hard enough to wake her up. Ethan, please don't do this here. I nodded slowly. You already did. That one landed. I saw it hit her. The room felt frozen around us. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Daniel finally stepped forward carefully. Maybe you should both talk privately. I looked directly at him for the first time all night. You should stop talking like a husband. His jaw tightened. Amelia immediately turned toward me. Don't. Don't what? Make this ugly. I stared at her for several seconds. Then I laughed quietly again because that sentence was unbelievable. Ugly. As if tonight hadn't already been ugly enough. As if public humiliation became inappropriate only once I reacted to it. I adjusted my coat calmly. You know what the worst part is? I asked. Amelia's eyes shimmered nervously. I was going to give you something tonight. Her gaze dropped instantly to the gift box. For a split second, I saw genuine curiosity. Hope even. I almost told her. Almost. But then I remembered her face while looking at Daniel on the balcony. So instead, I simply nodded toward him. Maybe he can get it for you instead. Then I walked out. Amelia called my name behind me. Twice. 3 times. But I didn't stop. Because if I turned around, there was a good chance I'd break completely. The cold Chicago wind hit my face the second I stepped outside. Traffic lights blurred through tears I refused to let fall. My chest physically hurt. Not metaphorically. Actually hurt. Like grief had teeth. I walked down the sidewalk carrying the small black box that contained the future I built for a woman already building emotional intimacy with someone else. My phone started vibrating before I even reached my car. Amelia. Again. 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 I silenced it. Then I got inside the car and finally let myself breathe. For the first time all night, nobody was watching me. No audience. No forced dignity. No pretending. I gripped the steering wheel while emotion crashed through me all at once. Humiliation. Rage. Heartbreak. Relief. I lowered my forehead against the wheel and shut my eyes. 11 years. Gone. And the crazy thing. Deep down, I think part of me knew long before tonight. Love notices distance before the mind accepts it. The signs were always there. I just kept choosing hope over reality. My phone vibrated again. This time it was Marcus. I answered without speaking. He exhaled heavily. Man. I laughed weakly. That bad. Nobody knows what to say. I do. Silence. Then Marcus spoke carefully. You should know, people have been talking for a while. Every word felt like broken glass. How long? I don't know exactly. But you heard things. Another pause. Yeah. I closed my eyes. And nobody told me. It wasn't confirmed. I shook my head slowly. It never is. Marcus sounded miserable. I'm sorry. I looked out through the windshield at the glowing city. I bought her lake house. Dead silence. What? She was supposed to open the gift tonight. Marcus actually cursed it under his breath. Jesus Christ. Yeah. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, What are you gonna do? I looked at the black gift box sitting in the passenger seat. At the tiny silver ribbon tied carefully, by hand earlier that afternoon, while I still believed tonight might save us. And for the first time in months. I told the truth. I think my marriage ended tonight. I drove for almost an hour before realizing I had nowhere to go. Home didn't feel like home anymore. The thought of walking into that penthouse apartment and seeing Amelia's perfume on the bathroom counter made my stomach twist. Every room suddenly felt contaminated with memories I didn't know how to survive. So I parked outside Lake Shore Drive and sat there watching black water crash against concrete beneath the city lights. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Amelia. Vanessa. Marcus. Even my mother. Word traveled fast when rich people witnessed public humiliation. I ignored all of them. At 12:43 a.m., Amelia finally left a voicemail. Her voice sounded shaky. Ethan, please answer me. Please, you embarrassed me tonight, but I still want to talk. I know things looked bad, but you're twisting this into something it is. Daniel is my friend, that's it. I'm coming home soon. Don't disappear on me. You embarrassed me tonight. That sentence replayed in my head until I laughed out loud alone in the car. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. Somehow, even now, she still saw herself as the injured party. I deleted the voicemail. Then I drove north. 3 hours later, I pulled onto the gravel driveway of the lake house just before dawn. The property sat surrounded by tall pine trees, isolated from everything except the sound of wind moving across water. The sky was turning pale blue behind the lake when I unlocked the front door. I stepped inside slowly. Silence greeted me. Warm wood floors, stone fireplace, soft amber lights. The kitchen Amelia once described while scrolling through design videos at midnight. The deep green cabinets, the brass handles, the oversized windows facing the water. I had built this place around her dreams. And suddenly, standing there alone felt unbearable. I dropped the gift box onto the kitchen island and stared out at the lake. Then I finally broke. Not dramatically. Not loudly. I just sat on the floor beside the island and cried until sunrise came through the windows. Because no matter how angry I was, I still loved her. That was the cruelest part. Love doesn't vanish the second betrayal appears. It lingers. It fights. It humiliates you by surviving longer than your pride. Around 8 in the morning, my phone rang again. Amelia. This time I answered. The silence between us stretched several seconds. Then she whispered, "Where are you?" "Does it matter?" "Yes. You seemed pretty occupied last night." I heard her breathing shake. "Ethan, please stop." "Stop what?" "This coldness." I almost lost my mind at that sentence. Coldness. As if months of emotional abandonment from her somehow translated into me being cruel because I finally reacted. I stood and walked toward the window, overlooking the lake. You thanked another man for supporting you instead of your husband. You're oversimplifying it. No, I'm simplifying it correctly. You left my birthday party. You left the marriage first. Silence. Sharp silence. Then she spoke softer. "There's nothing happening between me and Daniel." I closed my eyes. "Do you love him?" She didn't answer immediately. And that hesitation told me more than words ever could. My chest tightened violently. "Amelia." "I don't know," she whispered. There it was. Truth. Ugly, devastating truth. Not a denial. Not outrage. Not confusion. Just honesty arriving too late. I leaned against the counter because my knees suddenly felt weak. How long? It wasn't supposed to happen. That's not an answer. She started crying quietly. I didn't mean for it to become emotional. Emotional. As if that somehow hurt less. Maybe physical cheating would have been simpler. Cleaner. But emotional betrayal. That digs deeper. Because it means someone slowly gave away the parts of themselves that once belonged to you. I swallowed hard. Did you sleep with him? No. Too fast. Then quieter. No. I laughed bitterly. I can hear the difference between those two answers. Ethan. Did you? No, she repeated, but I thought about it. That confession hit like a punch to the ribs. I stared at the lake while my entire body went numb. And weirdly enough, I appreciated the honesty more than the lie. Because at least now, I wasn't crazy. At least now, I knew the distance wasn't imagined. Amelia cried harder into the phone. I'm sorry. I listened without speaking. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. I know. You made me feel insane for noticing. I know. You let me keep trying while you emotionally invested in somebody else. I know. Each admission sounded smaller than the damage behind it. That's the thing about betrayal. The explanation never matches the pain. I rubbed my face slowly. Why him? She exhaled shakily. He listened. The answer almost offended me with how cliché it sounded. I listened too. Not the same way. Anger finally flared hotter. I worked 60-hour weeks to support our life. I didn't ask for that. You enjoyed it. That's not fair. No, Amelia, what's not fair is spending months making me feel emotionally inadequate while building intimacy with another man behind my back. I didn't plan it. But you fed it. Silence again. Then she whispered the sentence I think destroyed me most. I felt lonely too. I stared out at the lake for a very long time after that. Because part of me understood. And understanding made it worse. We didn't become strangers overnight. We eroded slowly. Long hours. Stress. Routine. Missed conversations. Small disappointments left unresolved. Tiny emotional fractures that eventually widened enough for another person to slip inside. That didn't excuse her, but it explained us. And explanations are dangerous because they soften anger before the wound heals. I finally spoke quietly. I bought you a lake house. She stopped crying instantly. What? I looked around the room. The gift. Complete silence. Then, what are you talking about? This place. Her breathing caught. No. I spent 7 months renovating it. I heard her begin sobbing again immediately. Real sobbing this time. Raw. Broken. Ethan. You once said you wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere we could breathe again. Oh my God. I was going to surprise you. She cried so hard she couldn't speak properly anymore. And for the first time since the party, I felt something shift inside me. Not satisfaction. Sadness. Because this was the version of Amelia I missed. The real one beneath the defensiveness. The woman who still cared. I'm sorry, she whispered repeatedly. I sat down on the couch slowly. So am I. Then we both cried quietly on opposite ends of a phone call that felt like a funeral. Around noon, someone knocked on the lake house door. I almost ignored it. But when I opened the door, Marcus stood there holding coffee and looking exhausted. How the hell did you find me? You told me about the property after too many bourbons last winter. I stepped aside silently. Marcus entered slowly, taking in the house. Jesus, he muttered, you really did buy it. Yep. He set the coffee down carefully. She told you. I nodded once. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. Man. I sat across from him at the kitchen island. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed heavily. She's losing it. I stared down at my hands. She should have thought about that before publicly thanking her emotional boyfriend. He's not her boyfriend. I looked up sharply. Marcus held up his hands. I'm serious. I think it crossed emotional lines, absolutely, but I genuinely don't think they slept together. Does that matter? No. He sat down across from me. But I think it matters to her. I laughed quietly. You know what's insane? Part of me still wants her to show up here. Marcus nodded slowly. That's marriage. I hated how true that sounded. He studied me carefully. You leaving last night scared her. She didn't seem scared while flirting with him. That's not the same thing. I leaned back in the chair. You all knew. His expression tightened immediately. We suspected. Same difference. Nobody wanted to accuse her without proof. You didn't need proof, you had eyes. Marcus looked genuinely ashamed. I should have said something. Yeah. The honesty stung more than excuses would have. He sighed deeply. For what it's worth, Daniel's getting ripped apart this morning. I frowned slightly. By who? Everybody. That surprised me. Marcus shook his head. The second you left with the gift, the entire room changed. People realized how bad things actually looked. I stared toward the window. Too late. That's the problem with public humiliation. Nobody intervenes until damage becomes undeniable. Marcus sipped his coffee carefully. Amelia told Vanessa she thinks she destroyed her marriage. I laughed bitterly. Good instinct. She loves you. I closed my eyes briefly. She may, but she also let herself emotionally fall for somebody else while I was sitting right there. Marcus didn't argue. Because he couldn't. After a while he asked quietly, what are you gonna do? I looked around the house again. At the future I built for us. At the silence waiting inside every room. I don't know. And that terrified me. Because for the first time since I was 23 years old, I couldn't picture my life with Amelia anymore. That night she came. I heard tires crunch across gravel around 9 p.m. My heart reacted before my brain did. I stood slowly from the couch as headlights cut through the trees outside. Then Amelia stepped out of her car wearing jeans, sneakers, and one of my old gray hoodies. No makeup. Hair tied back messily. Eyes swollen from crying. She looked smaller somehow. Human. Not the glamorous woman from the rooftop party. Just my wife. Or maybe not my wife anymore. She hesitated at the front porch like she wasn't sure she deserved to enter. Then she knocked softly. I opened the door. For several seconds, we just stared at each other. God. I hated how much I still loved her face. Amelia's eyes immediately filled again when she looked past me into the house. You really built this for us. I nodded once. She covered her mouth with trembling fingers. The silence between us carried 11 years inside it. Finally she whispered, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. Amelia walked into the lake house slowly, looking around like she'd entered a dream she no longer deserved. Her fingers brushed the kitchen counter gently. The cabinets. You said green kitchens felt warm. Tears slid down her cheeks instantly. The porch lights. You saved photos of them. She broke completely after that. Amelia sat down at the island and cried openly while guilt crushed the air around us. And despite everything, part of me wanted to hold her. That's the insanity of love. Your heart remembers tenderness even while bleeding. I ruined this, she whispered. I stayed standing. You ruined trust. She nodded miserably. I know. Do you love him? Amelia shook her head immediately. No. You hesitated on the phone. Because I was confused. I stared at her. And now? She looked directly at me, with tears streaming down her face. I love you. The words hurt more than comforted me. Because if she loved me, how did we end up here? I sat across from her slowly. What exactly happened between you two? Amelia wiped her face shakily. At first, he was just someone easy to talk to. When? After the miscarriage. Pain flashed through me instantly. Neither of us had spoken that word aloud in months. Our daughter would have been 5 months old by now. The grief from losing the baby had quietly poisoned everything afterward. Amelia's voice trembled. You shut down after it happened. I looked away immediately because she wasn't wrong. The miscarriage destroyed me in ways I never explained properly. Instead of grieving openly, I buried myself in work. Longer hours. More projects. Less feeling. I thought I was holding us together, I admitted quietly. I know. You stopped talking to me too. Because every time I looked at you, I remembered losing her. That sentence hollowed me out. Amelia cried again softly. Daniel listened when I couldn't breathe anymore. And then, we kept talking. How often? Every day. The answer felt like a knife sliding deeper. Every day. While I slept beside her. While I tried fixing us blindly. Every day. Did everyone know? No. Marcus suspected. He asked me once. And I denied it. I laughed bitterly under my breath. Of course she did. Amelia reached toward me carefully across the counter. I pulled my hand away instinctively. That reaction visibly shattered her. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I rubbed my jaw slowly. You know what kills me? She stayed silent. I would have forgiven loneliness. Her face crumpled. I would have forgiven grief, distance, depression, anger, all of it. I looked directly at her. But you made me compete with another man without telling me the game started. Amelia broke down harder than before. And this time, I almost broke with her. Because beneath all the betrayal, I could finally see the truth clearly. Neither of us were monsters. Just two grieving people who lost each other slowly and didn't realize how far apart we drifted until someone else stepped into the silence between us. But understanding pain doesn't erase it. And trust, once cracked, never fits together the same way again. Amelia looked around the lake house again through tearful eyes. Were we supposed to move here? Eventually. You really believed we could fix things. I swallowed hard. I did. Her shoulders shook violently. And now, I looked at the woman I still loved more than anyone in the world. The woman who betrayed me. The woman who once held my hand in a hospital room while we cried over a heartbeat that disappeared too soon. And for the first time in our marriage, I truly didn't know the answer. Amelia stayed at the lake house that night. Not in our bedroom. Not beside me. She slept curled beneath a blanket on the couch downstairs, while I lay awake staring at the ceiling above the master bedroom we were supposed to share someday. Neither of us slept much. Every creak of the house sounded louder in the silence between us. Around 3 in the morning, I walked downstairs for water and found Amelia sitting by the fireplace wrapped in the gray hoodie, knees against her chest, staring into the flames. She looked up when she heard me. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry I ruined your surprise." I leaned against the doorway. That's not what ruined it. Pain flickered across her face. I know. I grabbed a glass from the kitchen. You should sleep. I can't. Me neither. The honesty sat heavily between us. Amelia looked around the room slowly. You built all this by yourself. Mostly. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to believe there was still something left to save. She lowered her eyes immediately. I drank the water slowly while watching her. Even exhausted and heartbroken, she still felt like home to me. That realization scared me more than anger ever could. Because love that survives betrayal becomes dangerous. It makes you vulnerable to repeating your own destruction. Amelia looked toward the fire again. When I thanked Daniel tonight, her voice cracked, I didn't realize how humiliating it would feel for you. I laughed quietly without humor. That's because you stopped seeing things from my side a long time ago. She nodded slowly. You're right. No defensiveness. No excuses. That somehow hurt more. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she whispered. But you protected him. Amelia's face tightened. What do you mean? When everyone started noticing your connection, you protected his feelings more than mine. Tears gathered in her eyes again because she knew I was telling the truth. You defended him, you hid conversations. You made me feel guilty for asking questions. I know. You let me feel insecure while pretending I was paranoid. Her breathing shook. I know. That phrase had become her punishment. Not because it fixed anything. Because she finally understood the damage clearly enough to stop denying it. I sat down across from her. Did you ever think about leaving me? Amelia looked horrified instantly. No. Really? Yes. Then what exactly were you doing? She stared into the fire for several long seconds before answering. I think, her voice trembled. I think I wanted someone to fill the parts of me that felt broken without having to face how broken our marriage actually became. That answer was painfully mature. Painfully honest. And it wrecked me because I understood it completely. People don't always cheat because they stop loving their partner. Sometimes they cheat because they stop recognizing themselves. The miscarriage changed us. Not all at once. Quietly. Like water slowly cracking stone. I became distant. Amelia became lonely. Neither of us knew how to pull the other back. And somewhere inside that grief, another man appeared offering emotional comfort, while I buried mine beneath work and silence. None of that erased responsibility. But it explained the road that brought us here. Amelia wiped tears from her cheeks. I hated myself tonight when you walked out. I looked down at my glass. Good. She accepted that too. No argument. No anger. Just pain. I saw your face when I hugged him, she whispered. I knew immediately something broke. Something broke. Not something hurt. Not something upset me. Something broke. That was exactly right. Because betrayal isn't a wound. It's a fracture. And fractures change the shape of things permanently. The fire crackled softly between us. Then Amelia said the words I think she feared most. If you want a divorce, I'll understand. I stared at her. Her voice collapsed completely after that sentence. But I don't want one. God, that nearly destroyed me. Because I believed her. I believed she loved me. And somehow that made everything harder instead of easier. I stood slowly and walked toward the windows overlooking the lake. Moonlight reflected off black water beyond the trees. Amelia spoke quietly behind me. I never slept with him. I nodded once. I know. You don't believe me. No, I do. She looked surprised. Then why does it still feel like this? I turned toward her slowly. Because emotional betrayal still counts. Her eyes filled again. I know. You gave him pieces of yourself that belonged inside this marriage. I know. You leaned on him instead of me. I know. You looked at him tonight the way you used to look at me. That one shattered her completely. Amelia covered her mouth as sobs escaped her chest. And for several seconds, I couldn't breathe either. Because I missed that version of us too. The younger version. The connected version. The version before grief hollowed us both out. I walked back toward the fireplace carefully, then finally sat beside her. Not touching. Just close enough to remember what closeness felt like. Amelia cried quietly into her hands. I don't know how to fix this. I answered honestly. I don't either. And that was the first completely truthful thing between us in a very long time. The next morning felt strangely peaceful. Not healed. Not fixed. But honest. For the first time in months, there were no hidden tensions beneath conversations. No fake normalcy. No pretending. Just truth. Painful truth. Amelia made coffee wearing my hoodie while sunlight spilled across the kitchen. At one point, she stopped and looked around the room again. You remembered every little thing. I shrugged faintly. You mattered. Her face collapsed again at those words. Because deep down, she knew she'd spent months acting emotionally disconnected from someone who still loved her completely. Around noon, her phone buzzed repeatedly on the counter. Daniel. Again. And again. Amelia stared at the screen for several seconds before picking it up. Then she blocked his number. Right in front of me. No dramatic speech. No performance. Just a quiet decision. I watched silently. She set the phone back down carefully. I should have done that sooner. Yes. I know. There was that phrase again. But this time it sounded less like guilt and more like mourning. Around 2 in the afternoon, we walked down toward the lake together. Cold wind moved across the water while pine trees swayed overhead. Amelia shoved her hands into the hoodie pockets and looked smaller than I'd seen her in years. Do you hate me? She asked quietly. I thought about it seriously. Then shook my head. No. Why not? Because I understand how we got here. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. That almost makes it worse. She was right. If she'd been cruel, selfish, heartless, maybe leaving would have been simple. But Amelia wasn't evil. She was broken. And unfortunately, so was I. We stopped near the dock I rebuilt by hand 6 months earlier. Amelia looked down at the water. I kept waiting for you to notice how much I was drowning. I swallowed hard. I thought working harder would protect us. I know. And every time I tried talking after the miscarriage, you looked like you were barely surviving. So I thought giving you space was helping. She wiped beneath her eyes. We both disappeared. That sentence settled heavily between us because it was true. Not equally. Her betrayal still crossed lines mine never did. But emotionally, we lost each other together. And maybe that was the hardest truth of all. Amelia looked toward me carefully. Is there any part of you that still wants this marriage? I answered too quickly. Yes. The honesty surprised both of us. Amelia started crying again immediately. But, I continued quietly, I don't know if wanting it is enough anymore. She nodded slowly like she expected that. Trust takes years to build, I said, and one night to destroy. I know. You made me feel replaceable. Her face twisted painfully. You're not. But I felt it. I know. I looked out across the lake. You looked at him like you needed him. Amelia cried silently beside me. I needed someone, she whispered. I just forgot it was supposed to be you. That sentence nearly folded me in half. Because underneath, all the betrayal sat the real tragedy. We were supposed to save each other from grief. Instead, we isolated inside it. Weeks passed after that. We returned to Chicago eventually, but nothing felt normal anymore. And maybe that was good. Normal had been killing us quietly. Amelia started individual therapy twice a week. Then couples therapy with me. Not glamorous movie therapy, where people cry once and heal instantly. Real therapy. Messy therapy. The kind where ugly truths crawl into daylight. I learned how deeply the miscarriage shattered her sense of self. She learned how badly emotional neglect and secrecy destroyed my trust. There were brutal sessions. Sessions where I could barely look at her. Sessions where she cried so hard we had to stop talking. Sessions where I admitted something horrifying. Part of me still blamed myself for losing the baby. Amelia broke apart hearing that because she'd carried the same guilt alone too. Grief had turned us into strangers carrying identical pain separately. And Daniel. He disappeared. Amelia never contacted him again. Not because I demanded it. Because she finally understood what boundaries should have existed long before feelings crossed lines. One night nearly 4 months later, Amelia found me sitting alone on the penthouse balcony, staring at the skyline. She sat beside me quietly. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she whispered, "Do you still think about leaving?" I answered honestly. "Sometimes." She nodded slowly. "I still think about that night." "So do I." "The way you looked at me before walking out." I stared ahead silently. "I've never seen that much pain on your face before." I laughed weakly. "Yeah." She reached for my hand carefully. This time, I let her hold it. Not because everything healed. Because healing had finally begun. "There's a difference." Amelia leaned against my shoulder softly. "I don't expect you to trust me quickly. You may never get the old version of trust back." "I know. And if anything like this ever happens again." "It won't." I looked at her. Not angry. Not suspicious. Just serious. "It can't." She nodded immediately. "I understand." And she did. Because betrayal changes the rules permanently. The second chance becomes the final chance. Months later, we returned to the lake house together for the first time since the birthday party. Snow covered the trees around the property. The lake shimmered silver beneath winter light. Amelia stood in the kitchen quietly while I unpacked groceries. Then she suddenly wrapped her arms around me from behind. I froze slightly. Not from discomfort. From memory. Because there was a time I thought I'd never feel her hold me again. "I love you," she whispered against my back. I closed my eyes. The old pain still existed. Maybe it always would. Some fractures never fully disappear. But love had survived too. Bruised. Changed. Wiser. "I love you too," I answered quietly. And for the first time in a very long time. Neither of us looked away. Years later, people would probably simplify our story. Some would say Amelia emotionally cheated. Others would say grief nearly destroyed our marriage. Both would be true. But the deeper truth was harder to explain. Sometimes relationships don't collapse because love disappears. Sometimes they collapse because pain goes unspoken too long. And when loneliness enters a marriage quietly enough, people start reaching for comfort in dangerous places. What Amelia did was wrong. What I ignored was wrong too. Not equally, but significantly. The birthday party didn't destroy our marriage. It exposed what had already been breaking underneath the surface for months. The real choice came afterward. Whether two wounded people could face each other honestly enough to rebuild from ruins, instead of pretending the ruins never existed. Some couples can't. We almost didn't. but on a freezing night beside a lake house built from hope and heartbreak, we decided to try anyway. And somehow, against all odds, that became enough.